um, let's go back in time for a hot second. Let's go back in time to April 2015. The Honey Badger Brigade was at the Calgary Expo in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Basically, the Texas of Canada. If you're just wondering what kind of place Calgary is, very, very much like Texas. Just however you want to take that, take that. They were at the Comic-Con out there, the Calgary Expo, and they ended up getting booted out. And they got kind of defamed in the process, right? The Mary Sue feminist rag website defamed them, and they threatened to sue, and sue they did. And it took 3 years to get a judgment, and that judgment did not go the way that they wanted. In fact, they lost on all counts, right? They lost on all counts, and that's shitty. That is terrible. If you followed that story at all a couple years ago, you know that they were completely screwed over. They did nothing wrong, but of course they're men's rights activists, and that's a no-no when it comes to the progressive nature that is Canada. But they actually issued a statement. They issued a statement here, and I was approached by Brian Martinez, who is a member of the Honey Badger, and he asked me to cover it, so he gave me the statement to go through here. So it's a bit of a long statement. It's a bit of a long statement, but it should give us a good idea as to what happened and what they plan on doing next. So it says here, and this is coming in through a Google document, on Wednesday, 1st, 2018, at the Provincial Civil Court in Alberta, the Honey Badger Brigade received a ruling on its case against the Calgary Expo and the Mary Sue. This ruling was led aloud by the judge with our legal advisor, Harry Copito, attending by phone. At the end of the trial itself, the Honey Badgers were hopeful that we'd received a fair hearing and would see a verdict in our favor on all our counts. Our physical evidence proved the assertions printed about us in the Mary Sue and then promoted by the Calgary Expo in response to queries regarding our expulsion were false. That is, our booth had not been registered under a false name, but as Honey Badger Brigade, and that we had neither created a disruption nor engaged in any harassment. The Calgary Expo did not follow their own stated policies, part of the exhibitor agreement referenced in the contract and the handling of the incident in question, and therefore had not fulfilled their end of the contract between both vendor and venue. And that, as a result of Allison, suffered financial losses that fit the legal definition of special damages. Our evidence and our opponent's explicit defense testimony proved that accusations they publicized were made with malice and caused reputational damage. Our evidence and our opponent's explicit defense testimony proved that there had been no negative public reaction whatsoever to the presence of the Honey Badger Brigade at the Calgary Expo, until the Mary Sue's editor Sam Maggs began discussing our presence there, and her friend Soha, not present at the expo, publicized our attendance with negative commentary on Twitter. Now, that's kind of a long way to go about it, but yeah, they got booted out, mostly because Allison, part of the Honey Badgers, had asked a question, or pushed back a little bit about against some feminists on a particular panel. And as we've learned from VidCon in 2017, if you push back against the against feminists, then you are clearly an enemy of the people, and can be defamed on websites like the Mary Sue and Sam Maggs. Now, if you know anything about Sam Maggs, right? If you know anything about Sam Maggs, this is the woman who went on TV in Toronto, okay, and made a big deal about this, but GTA Online and simulated rape, that she felt threatened and violated because there were people playing GTA online that apparently had simulated rape, and it triggered her. It triggered her. So she's one of the more notable Toronto-based Canadian feminists, and all in all, not a good person at all. At all. But here we go. She's going out there and kind of defaming the Honey Badgers through the website, the Mary Sue. Now, it goes on to say here that our opponents did not submit any evidence. They did not call any witnesses other than Shane Henkelman to testify on behalf of the Calgary Expo, and their entire case was based on the testimony of one Calgary Expo employee who by that time was the only representative on the side of both defendants, who had both fired their lawyer. The Mary Sue didn't even show up for court. So they had one witness to show up. The Mary Sue didn't even bother to show up. And the people, the representatives on both sides of the defendants had fired their lawyers. I mean, I guess they probably figured to themselves, hey, they're probably going to end up being okay. They're probably going to end up winning, which they did. So I guess kudos to them. I don't agree with it, but it's, I mean, when you figure when you go to court, if you have enough evidence to showcase that there is some wrongdoings that had happened, and the other side doesn't even really bother to like put up a defense at all, you figure the judge would have been like, well, yeah, they're not even trying to defend themselves. Perhaps there's more here that's true than not. I guess in Canada the law works differently. I don't know. I'm just making that up. Now it says, due to these facts, it came as even more of a surprise when the judge ruled against us on all 4 causes of action. This was further compounded when, in the course of stating his reasons for the ruling, the judge demonstrated that his decision was partly based on treating physical evidence which had been entered into the record, upon which he had ruled, as if it did not exist. Allison Tiemann, who had submitted both full-length recording of the entire panel discussion of which she was accused of causing a disruption, and the segment that is alleged to be harassment. During the proceedings, Allison had requested to have the entire full-length panel recorded played for the court to show that her behavior was not dramatically different from other attendees in the panel. The judge had denied her request, stating that he would take it under advisement that her behavior was no different, but that if our opponents contested that version of events, the recording would be played. Later in his ruling, the judge stated that he could not be sure he heard the entire incident, and therefore could not be sure that the allegations of harassment were not based on something from the panel discussion that had been excluded from the recording he did hear. In effect, stating that his ruling was in part based upon his own refusal to hear the evidence he deemed relevant to the case. So that is something to consider here, right? That is something that's very interesting in all regards here. So you've got this full, full-length panel, which is about what, like an hour maybe. Allison got up, I think, at one time and asked like one question, push back against one thing with feminists. They gave her the floor to do so, right? If I recall correctly, they gave her the floor to do so. And then they, it wasn't like so much there was a discussion that took place, but there was a brief back and forth. And at that point in time, it wasn't like Allison was then removed, kicking and screaming from the room, and then ejected from the conference. So trying to say that that was harassment, when the judge essentially here states that it was, he would take her word that it was no different than anybody else, never bothered to look at it himself, and from what it appears is that the Calgary Expo did not contest that particular assertion. That's interesting, right? That he kind of just ignored it. Yeah, that's, granted, I do want to just point out that this is in fact a one-sided discussion. This is the Honey Badgers official statement. So it is their side of the situation. So we do have to take that with a grain of salt. However, based on what I know about them and what I know about the situation, this does seem like it's a bit more on the accurate side. Now, it goes on to say here that he stated that Allison had full knowledge of the Expo's contract when she applied, but ignored the Expo's failure to follow its own policies regarding its process for handling conflicts, such as their response to the situation, denied Allison the full measure of the contract she signed. His acceptance of opponents' arguments regarding Allison's actions relied in part on censoring the exhibitor's agreement, considering the exhibitor's agreement's anti-harassment policy contractual. However, the policies of the Expo, ignored reading its conflict management procedures, are also part of the exhibitor agreement. Therefore, the judge's reasoning indicated that upon signing the contract, Allison became fully obligated under it, including an obligation to follow all the policies referenced in it, but not entitled to expect the company she'd agreed to do business with to be equally obligated to do the same. And that is kind of like rules for thee, but not for me sort of thing, right? So it does seem here ultimately that the judge didn't really want to like take the evidence that they had presented and the contracts and the policies into account, but still arguing that it's still ruling that they lost the case. That seems pretty fair, right? It goes on to say here, additionally, his stated reasoning for why the Expo was not equally obligated to include claims from the defendant's arguments, which were directly discredited by physical evidence, including the claim that the FBI had deemed GamerGate a group that disseminates hate messages. Again, no physical evidence supported the claim was submitted, while Allison had submitted physical evidence disproving it. Okay, so this is where GamerGate comes into play. So this judge in Calgary sat there and he was like, he's all like, you guys were involved in GamerGate. Are they literally trying to say that because the honey badgers are pro Gamergate, because they're pro ethics and video game journalism, that this like discredits their claim entirely? Because that's kind of what it boils down to. I think it's starting to boil down to that. It's oh, Gamergate did it. No, like if he deemed that the FBI, or he says here that the FBI had deemed Gamergate a group that disseminates hate messages, that is irrevocably false. Completely false. A load of shit, right? It's just, it's nuts. Again, it's always just beating Gamergate into the ground. It is a horse that has been killed. It has been decapitated. It has been stripped for parts. And here comes a lone redneck, lonely after a long night of drinking, to finish himself off in the rear end of that horse. That is how dead Gamergate is. And even the Freedom of Information Act from the FBI 2 years ago that proved that Gamergate didn't do nothing is still not even taken into account here. But the judge is like, well, I read on the internet that Gamergate then bang all beat the bad guy, so I gotta go sit there and dang all make it all you guys' fault and shit. That is, wow. Holy shit, that's terrible. And now the judge indicated that his ruling was partly based on the misreading of evidence regarding Calgary Expo's personnel's tweeted promotion of the Mary Sue's claims about us, which he described as if they had come from an uninvolved third party and not the Expo. That had been published on the Expo's Twitter account by third party and not the Expo. Oh, what? What? Oh, wow. What kind of bullshit is that? It was posted on the Calgary's official Twitter account, but it was posted by an uninvolved third party and not the Expo itself. So they have no responsibility. It's like, oh no, we were hacked. What is this? What are they? What are they? Joanne Reed's blog all of a sudden? What the hell? What the hell? The testimony and published physical evidence in the case showed that the tweet in question was composed by Expo personnel and displayed on social media via the Expo's official account in response to a third party's question as to why we were evicted. So there was a question asked by a third party. The official account responded, which at that point is then the official response from the Expo, and that was still disregarded. This is some crazy stuff here. This is some really bad stuff. Holy crap. Now it says here that these and other errors are in the reasoning given for this ruling cause a case for appeal. Based on the stated logic of the judge, this would have set the same precedent in the law that we had not chosen to fight in the first place, would have been set to the social matrix. It would pave the way for business entities to accept money from consumers for goods or services, refuse to provide the purchased product and keep the consumer's money, then publicly defame the consumer as a person of fraudulent business practices, using their excuse a condition, in our case, political unpopularity, that was not explicitly addressed in the sales contract. It is the Honey Badger Brigade's position that this ruling cannot be allowed to stand unchallenged, not just because of what was done to Allison and our group that was wrong, but because of the implications of rolling over at this point. This is Allison's fight. It's the Honey Badger Brigade's fight. It's also the fight for everyone like us who would be at risk for similar treatment at the hands of any corporate entity wanting to hide their unfair business practices behind the mask of political correctness. Allison Tiemann and the HBB are considering an appeal the ruling and continue to fight it in a higher court. The appeals process is far more simple than the case has been to this point. New evidence is generally not submitted during an appeals process. Rather, the party filing the appeal asks the appeals court to consider whether the original judge's ruling was an error based on the existing evidence and applicable law. Witnesses would not have to be in attendance. So basically what they're saying here in this statement is that the judge done goofed. The decision is nuts. It's a load of crap. It's a terrible load of crap is what it sounds like to me. And then they want to appeal it. And honestly, I really feel like this is a situation where they probably they should appeal it. I really do agree with that. I feel, I've known the Honey Badgers now for a couple of years. I met a bunch of them at VidCon last year. They're good people. They didn't deserve to be treated the way that they were treated in regards to the Calgary Expo. And I think if they put out a fundraiser, I will help promote that. So, because, we do need to fight this. This is, I think, a situation that, okay, here's why I feel this is important. Outside of the fact that, look, my disclosure goes, I know these people. I'm friends with a few of them. I've been covering this now for 3 years. when it pops up and stuff like that. So there's my disclosure. But on the other side of that, what we have here is a situation where a group of people are being targeted for their political beliefs that go against what some organizers at the Calgary Expo believed, and kick them out as a result. These people did nothing wrong. The Honey Badgers, if you ever meet them, literally nice people. Just super laid back, chill, nice people. Not an evil bone in their body. They're not going to go out there and Allison pushed back on a feminist panel. Oh no, the horror of finally taking the fight back to the feminists, right? But remember, you can't challenge a feminist when she's on stage. It scares them, right? It scares them, and you end up getting yourself in trouble. Just imagine if this would have gone down at VidCon. Holy crap! That's why this is important, because this kind of stuff cannot go unchallenged. And even though if it became a legal precedent in Canada, which wouldn't apply if anyone was booted out of VidCon or something similar for similar reasons, it still would set the tone of look, this is stuff that will be fought legally, and this is stuff that will eventually be won legally. And also, seriously, GamerGate didn't do nothing. This is so stupid, and it's ridiculous. So with that being said, check out the Honey Badgers on Twitter, check out their website, check out their podcast, and I'll cover this as much as I can when we know more. Thank you to Brian Martinez for the Honey Badgers for sending this my way, keeping me informed on the situation so I can then in turn let you guys know just what the fuck is going on.